Okay, Houston, I'm on the porch. Roger, Neil. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
When Yuri Gagarin went into space, the first human being, and then followed by Alan Shepard. And that was the 5th of May, 1961. On the 25th of May, 1961, President Kennedy announced we were going to go to the moon, we're going to land on the moon, and we're going to return safely. The astronauts appreciate the return safely part. Nobody wanted a one-way trip. So I began to dream a little bit about that. Went back to school, got a master's degree, worked on the Apollo guidance and navigation system, which was being built by MIT in Boston, and been on the test pilot school. And after I graduated, I realized I was qualified. And as I was reading the Sunday paper in California, one of the articles was, NASA is seeking more astronauts. Please apply. And so I read the qualifications, and I was qualified, and so I applied and was selected after about an 8-month process. So Dorothy and I moved to Houston, Texas, which is the home of the astronauts, and we began our training. I wasn't very optimistic that I would get a chance to go. There were only so astronauts. However, we had 3 killed in a fire. We had 4 killed in an automobile accident. 1 in an automobile accident and 4 in airplane accidents. Some of the senior ones retired, like John Glenn, Scott Carpenter. Some were medically not able to fly. So as a result of that, our group of astronauts started to bubble up, if you will, and we started getting opportunity to fly. I was very fortunate to work on 5 of the 9 missions to the moon. I was in mission control on Apollo 10. And a great privilege for me and a great honor, I was in mission control talking to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin when they landed on the moon. It was a very anxious moment in mission control because we were running out of fuel. I had called 30 seconds to the Eagle, which was their spacecraft, which meant they had 30 seconds to land on the moon. And if they didn't land within that 30 seconds, the next call from mission control, the next transmission was Eagle aboard. Well, 13 seconds left inside the spacecraft, and it said something about Houston, old Orion, that was our spacecraft name, Orion. Old Orion is finally here, Houston, fantastic. And it was fantastic. I bet I used that word 900 times during our 72 hours on the moon, because every time you went over a little rise, you saw something different. And so it was very, very exciting to have that opportunity to see this part of the moon. It's called, the part we landed was called the Descartes Hochland. named after a mathematician that lived 1500s or 1600s, Rene Descartes. And so that was our area, and we had to explore this valley with this little car we had. It was a little electric car that was actually folded up and bolted to the outside of the spacecraft. And so when we got onto the moon, we uncovered the car, and we're looking at the bottom of the car. And there were two cables, and so we started pulling these cables, and this car started moving out from the spacecraft. And when it got out about 45 degrees, the pins pulled out, and the wheels unfolded like landing gear on an airplane. It just unfolded, and there was this car there. So we continued to pull it down, and got it down onto the surface, and put up the seats, activated the steering, and John drove off. John, my commander, was the driver of the car, and I was the navigator. So we had trained so that I would navigate us across the moon with a set of maps that they gave us, which weren't very good, of course. They'd been taken from orbit. And so on this map, you couldn't see anything smaller than 15 meters. Well, there are a lot of big holes that are 10 meters across. And if you come across a ridge, there might be a big hole in front of you. So you had to be careful as you drove. And it was like driving on ice. The back end of the car kept going back and forth. We occasionally spun the car out, but we never felt like we were going to turn over. And so to get into the car, what I did was just go and hold on to the car, and in my suit, I just did this, and I jumped up and pulled real hard and landed on the seat. And in a spacesuit, you cannot do this, and you can't do a knee bend in an Apollo spacesuit. So we look like Frankenstein walking across the moon most of the time because it's stiff-legged. You cannot bend your leg like this. The suit's so stiff. So when you land in this seat, you're like this, like straight. And we had a seat belt, and we put it over here, and we just sort of cranked ourselves in until we could look forward, and then we're securely fastened into this car, because you'll see in a video as you drive, it bounced a lot across the lunar surface. It was a rough drive, but it was fun. We set the moon speed record, 17 kilometers per hour. We drove a total of about 25 kilometers, and the farthest they would let us go was 5 kilometers, because the car would go 100 kilometers, but if you drove out 5 kilometers and the car broke down, you had to walk back. There was no wrecker service, there was no mechanics. If you couldn't get it fixed, you abandoned the car and you walked back. And so we felt like we could walk about 5 kilometers was about our maximum. So what we did every day, by the way, we were on the moon for 72 hours, almost. So we divided the 72 hours up into 3 24-hour periods. And during that 24-hour periods, we slept for about, we call it a rest period, for 8 hours. We woke up, we ate a meal, we suited up, we put our spacesuits on. That took about 3 hours to get it all checked out. We opened a door, we climbed out, we explored for, the longest was 7 hours and 45 minutes. We climbed back inside, we took off our suits, we recharged everything so it would be ready to go for the next day. We ate a meal, talked to mission control, and went to sleep. So that was our routine while we were up on the lunar surface. The maximum time we were outside was 7 hours, about 45 minutes, if I recall. The shortest was about 5 hours and 45 minutes. So over 20 hours we were actually outside exploring this fascinating moonscape. I felt right at home. There was no fear that we had, no sense of danger. Though the moon is a very hostile environment, you don't feel that way. you're looking at a terrain that you had studied from the maps, and so you look, okay, there's Stone Mountain here, and there's Smoky Mountain over here, and you couldn't see Plum Crater. This we called Plum Crater, but as we drove across the moon, finally, hey, there's Plum Crater. You could see it on the maps. And so we felt like we were familiar with our landing area. When I put on my spacesuit down here on Earth, and with all of my equipment, the life support system on the back, the cameras and the boots and everything, I weighed, 170 kilograms. But up on the moon, you divide by that by 6, so it was slightly less than 30 kilograms. So you could bend a little bit and you could jump, and you had this springiness about you, so that's why we look like kangaroos sometimes when we go across the lunar surface, because of the light gravity that we had. Well, I want to show this video, and then I'll have a few anecdotes that I want to talk about, and then we'll have an opportunity for you to ask some questions. I've got some, after the video, I've got some slides, photographs that we can cycle through, and you'll get a chance to ask questions. You can see the lunar surface, see the footprints that we had put, and you can see around the crater here is a set of footprints that we walked, and everywhere you walked on the moon, you left your footprints. So you never worried about getting lost. How do you get back? Well, you just turn around and follow your tracks back. And so everywhere we drove the car, we left the tracks. And so it was easy to get back. But we had a navigation system on the rover. We never had to follow our tracks back because of the navigation system. Had we had a problem, we could have followed the tracks back. This object here is a shovel that we use to collect lunar soils and rocks. It was about it was like a little spade to collect the rocks. So could we get the video up and running, the DVD, if we can? And while he's getting that queued up, I was going to point out up there the car. You saw it went all the way into the lunar surface, which was a surprise. So, and this is how you get up. You push up, and you do another push up, and I almost make it, and I do another one, and I'm up. So, I fell down a lot, so I got used to doing that. We sample together usually. Here I am with a rake sampling the gray lunar soil, and I put the sample into this bag that John has. You can see in the background over here there's some white rock off to the upper right. And that was actually about 8 kilometers away. We were not able to get over those rocks, but there was a big crater, meteor hit over there and took some rocks over in our side. Now I'm trying to catch this rock, and I don't do a very good job. So I lose that rock, but I'm determined to pick up this rock. So with my little scoop, I get the rock again, and I'm trying to do this by myself, and this time I catch it, but I dropped the bag I was putting it in. But I had another bag, so I was okay. This is John Young next to a rock that was almost 3 meters tall. Here I am running back towards the lunar module over here. We slept in the upper portion of the lunar module. You can see the flag again, still got the same wrinkles in it that it had when I put it up. This is our Moon Olympics, and here I am going to set the moon record, and unfortunately, there I go over backwards. And that was the only moment where I had great fear up on the lunar surface, because I was falling on my backpack, and if I jarred a piece of the plumbing loose, I was dead. Fortunately, the suit was very steady and strong, and John helped me up, but my heart was pounding as I tried to calm down. Fortunately, I was okay, and we were able to leave the car up on the moon. Tonight, this is a picture of my family. Tonight, when you watch Magnificent Desolation over an IMAX, you'll see a simulation of me dropping that picture on the lunar surface. Here's the lift-off. We left the car up on the moon. So as I told the folks last night, if you want an $8 million car with a dead battery, there are 3 of them up on the moon. So I can tell you exactly where they are.
Feeling you could have when you especially as moonwalker, you watch the moon from the Earth. What kind of emotion do you still feel?
Today, my emotions, I was in, let me start again. The last full moon we had, I was outside, and I looked up, and the moon was coming up, and even today, 36 years later, I get this wonderful feeling that I've been there, and it still charges me with excitement. That I had this experience. On the other hand, it's still a romantic body to me. I look up, Dorothy and I going out, we're at the beach, or we're walking together in the evening and look up at the moon, and we can still have romantic feelings about it. To me, so it's on one hand, it's very familiar. On the other side, it's now distant and beautiful, and yet I can recall, if you will, the harshness of the moon, and yet the beauty of the moon. And it's a great feeling to know that our footprints are still there. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll try it without a microphone. Well, you mentioned the Plum crater and Astronaut, which were obviously not far away from your spacecraft. So how can you make sure when you're actually landing not to hit one of these erosions or uneven parts of the moon surface? Because when we see the video, it looks like a very quick descent, and you were basically not seeing actually where you were going. Can you tell me how that works on, and never anything happened, so all those missions landed safely, and it seems somehow unbelievable.
Well, in actuality, House Rock was 4.5 kilometers from where we landed. The Stone Mountain was 4 kilometers away. So our objective was to land in the middle of this valley, almost equidistant between these 2 large objects that we would eventually explore. And our problem was, we were targeted to the middle of this valley, and what we had to do is we came in. By the way, the descent lasted 9.5 minutes from the time you start down till you touch down. And what you saw was the last, basically, 30 seconds of that 9.5 minutes. So as we came in at about, let's see, it would be about 1.5 kilometers, the vehicle pitches down, and we see the landing site for the very first time. And when we begin to estimate where we are in relation to our objective, and we start to maneuver, well, we're a little long, we're a little north, and we start to maneuver, and the closer we get, the more detail you begin to see. And so you're trying to find a place that's not without any craters, but without any really big craters. And so John identified a spot, and he began to maneuver, and you come in, and the last 30 meters or so is like a helicopter coming down. And I'm calling the altitude off as he's descending. And so we touch down, and I'm watching out my window that we're not actually drifting into a big hole, a crater on this side, and he's monitoring his side. And so we touched down and shut down, and we were okay. We actually picked a spot that was level. But that was the probability of that happening is very high, but when we shut down and the next day we got outside and I went around to the back, we had actually landed within 3 meters of a big crater behind us that we did not see. It was shallow and in such a way that it was invisible to us due to the way the shadows were on the moon at this point. And so we were very fortunate that we didn't land back there. The vehicle would not have turned over, but it would have put the experiments package out of my reach. It would have been, they were up in here, and if we landed in this crater, I could not have reached the experiments package, so we were very fortunate. And all of the Apollo had that problem, to maneuver in to try to find a spot that was safe to land in. Yeah. Questions? So I want to tell one little story, and then this program will be over. It's a personal story of our trip. On the way to the moon, on the second day, Ken Mattingly, the command module pilot, lost his wedding ring. He'd taken his rings off. We had no showers, no bath facilities on Apollo. So to get clean, you just took off everything, and you're floating there. You took rings, watches, everything off, and you had water, and you had a towel. You got a wet towel, and you just rubbed down. And so he had stored his clothing and his ring and watch in a patch on a pocket on the side of the spacecraft. Well, when he got finished, he started getting dressed, and everything was there, but his wedding ring, it had floated out and was somewhere in the spacecraft, but we couldn't find it. We journeyed to the moon, and John and I landed on the moon. 3 days later, we come back, and now it's the 8th day of the mission, and he's still looking for this ring, and we can't find it. And so on the way home, we had a spacewalk. We call it external activity, EVA. And so we opened the door of the spacecraft. Mattingly floats out and goes to the back of the spacecraft down at what we call the service module. I come out, and I'm making sure he doesn't get entangled, and I'm just sitting and just wedged into the hatch with my feet, looking down. Over here is the Earth, about 250,000 kilometers. Back over here is the big moon, and it's just fantastic view. So I float back inside, and I'm down at the back of the spacecraft looking out the door. Mattingly comes back, and he goes out 3 meters and is working on a biological experiment on the end of this 3-meter pole. And his back is to me, and he's just silhouetted in the sunlight, and working on this experiment, talking to mission control. And as I look over, there's his wedding ring floating out the door. And I said, there it is. So I reach for it, and I miss it, and it floats out the door. Now, we're traveling through space now about, about 4,800 kilometers per hour. But there's no atmosphere, so everything floats along together. And the only difference in the velocity is this slow movement of this ring. And I'm watching it, and I said, well, lost in space. But it floated out and hit him on the back of the head about 5 minutes later. And he's got a round helmet and a round ring. And the probability of that making a 180-degree bounce is almost zero. But that's what happened. It hit him on the helmet and started back towards the hatch. Slowly, ever so slowly, it floated back in the hatch, and I grabbed it. And so when it got back...
Wow.
So when he gets back inside, into my glove was his wedding ring. I said, I got something for you. Look at that, and I told him the story. Well, thank you very much for your warm welcome, and I hope you've enjoyed our evening.